Hello and welcome to Talking Dogs on a Monday. I'm Ian Fortune. I'm your host for this evening's action. We are recording this in the morning, and that'll become a little bit more evident later on when we're talking about the English Derby for very obvious reason. But as you can see, I'm not joined by the Exile Dub. He's off on his jollies. Barry Call was due to join us, but Barry had some great news over the weekend. Welcomed a small litter, a litter of one, as he referred to it in his WhatsApp group. He is welcomed a baby son. Congratulations to Barry and his wife, Neve. And it means that, well, we're stuck. We're stuck with the cat. Robert Catterson was due to be on, but now it's just me and him. Robert, let's do this forward and back because you're more used to asking questions than I am nearly at this stage.
Yeah, yeah.
You've been asking the world questions for the last 2 or 3 years for Racing Post Greyhound Television, and that brings us perfectly to where we were last night. You were at Clonmel for the final of the National Produce Stakes, and while it wasn't the result that many people were expecting, it really was a tremendous result. This year we inducted the wonderful Sheila Spillane into the Hall of Fame. And who knew that just a matter of months later, she'd be receiving her first classic success. Herself and her son-in-law, JJ Fenley, had the brilliant Burgess Supreme. Made all last night. It may have been a shock result, but it certainly was a popular one.
It was Ian, because obviously even beforehand you could see what it meant to JJ having a runner in the produce, because he's obviously a Tipperary man. He said he was going to the produce stakes, all of his life. It was just a dream come true to have a runner in the finals. He didn't appear to have much expectations whatsoever. He was the outsider of the six. He was just enjoying it. And then suddenly, after what happened at the first bend, suddenly that dream became a reality. I thought at one stage, the third bend, he was in a little bit of bother, but in fairness, he'd shown it in the first round that he was capable of leading. And he got the flyer that he needed. He probably got a little bit of trouble that he needed as well, because he's not the strongest of stayers, although JJ did refer to afterwards that he's staying better. But as you said, it was a real local win. I suppose if it was either JJ and Sheila winning, or Adam Dunford, who's a huge part of Clonmel, either of those wins from a local perspective would have been huge. But brilliant to see, maybe not one of the big guys and an outsider winning. He got a great reception. It meant an awful lot to him. Obviously, Sheila was watching in from where she was. And it was brilliant. And, to win a produce stakes, Ian, for a long time, and maybe still to a certain degree, it's the one puppy competition that you set at the start of the year that you'd love to win. And JG has now won it. And, he said last night it meant more to him than probably ever winning a derby or something like that. It was brilliant.
Yeah, this is a dog who debuted in the future champion Michael Fortune Unraced down in
Yeah.
Scorthy, and on that occasion, he was only beaten his short head on the line in the final, beaten by Hackett Carlo. This is his second competition, the second final he's got to, and this time he's after getting over the line. You said he was obviously a 20-1 outsider, but when you look at his form through the competition, like he did a 275 and a 283 in the first two rounds, set a strong gallop in both of those nights, and yes, strong ones got in behind him and picked him up, but this isn't one of those sort of 20-1 chances where you go, it was very hard to make a case for him. I certainly wrote it. I'm sure many other people wrote about it, that he had the potential to set the pace because he does have wonderful early speed, and
Yeah.
20-1 in a final when you're in front just does seem like, I know it's hindsight, but does it not seem a bit big to you?
It does, and it wasn't until afterwards. Sean Burke came up to me straight away. He was great to us last night, and he said, "You know what? I fancied him," and you could see why you fancied him. And as you said, if he hit the lids, he was nearly a guaranteed leader. And if Clonbrine Treaty didn't break, there was always a chance that there was going to be a little bit of traffic in behind, and that's what happened. He turned at one stage; he was six clear, and in the produce stakes final or in any final, if a dog is six clear, 9 times out of 10 they're not going to get picked up. So yeah, I know what you're saying. A lot of times you say, I couldn't really have backed him, but you probably could have backed that lad last night, especially if you were
Yeah.
seeing 20-1.
Yeah, this is 20-1. Yeah. And of course, being on RPG TV would have been available on various exchanges and whatnot. I can
Yeah.
only imagine what type of price he was with them. Hookham ran a big race in
Mm.
second spot for Adam Dunford. He's very strong. He's a dog I've liked from the very start. We've mentioned him a few times on this platform. He was a bit unlucky now because he
He
goes up
was.
a clear second, and only for Clonmel Shadow racing up his inside in the opening corner and just doing enough to bother him and get in his way and clipping him on the heels and whatnot, he'd have been, he probably would have won. He's only beaten 2 lengths. As you say, he's probably 6 lengths behind at one point. He's relegated a third by Our Mystery, who actually ran a fine race for much of the way and looked like he was closing as well on Burgess Supreme, but Hookham was the one that came through for second spot. You'd imagine there's brighter days for him. He may need that bit further, even 575 600, because just looking at him last night, the extra 25 yards into the corner against real top class 550-yard dogs probably won't suit. But then when you step up to 575 600, more emphasis on the stamina and pure pace, and that's something he has in abundance.
Yeah, and I think the likes of Shelbourne Park, and you refer to a lot, is probably going to suit him. It's a more galloping track. Obviously, Clonmel is running brilliantly, but I think if Adam brought him to Shelbourne, you could see him really excel. But he looks like a dog in the Shelbourne 600 next year. He'd be very much towards the top of the betting. But yeah, it's all about fine margins, as you said. If he gets around the bend, I think there's little or no doubt about he was going to win. He's picked up Pat's dog in the end to finish second. He's run a blinder. He was the dog last night. A lot of people were saying if Clonbrine Treaty didn't win, he was the one that was going to win because he's got that savage pace from the second bend. But listen, he's run a blinder. Adam's dogs are running really well, and I think he's got plenty of good days to look forward to with Hookham.
He's an impressive young trainer. That he's had quite a couple of years. You know what I mean? Some very fast dogs around him, and I think much of that is down to his own talent with the greyhound.
Absolutely, he's been in a number of finals that RPG TV have covered. He had 2 dogs in the open race that he managed to win with one of them. I think there was a few quid after looking at back last night. But yeah, he seems to be. He's definitely a young lad going places. And even last night, away from having a runner, I was chatting to a couple of people, Sherry-Ann O'Donnell and Sean Burke, and he's a big part of what goes on at Clonmel. He's there working every day of the week, away from training greyhounds, trying to get the track up and running and keeping it, running as well as it can. He just seems to breed and eat greyhounds, but he's a young man who definitely knows how to train them as well.
You mean figuratively? He doesn't actually eat them now, right?
No, yeah.
Right? Just you never know. Some people picked it up wrong.
Yeah, just to be sure.
Our Mystery was third. He's a nice dog. He didn't get the flyer he needed. So speaking of Hookham, he got the flyer. The old adage is he broke too well. I don't think that can count in this case because he needed to break well and get a clear run to win the competition, to win the stake. But as it was, it just left him vulnerable to that rapid improving Clonmel up the inside. That's how he lost his position. Our Mystery, in contrast, if he'd made a similar start to Hookham, he would have been right there, bang on the pace off the second bend. It just didn't quite happen for him. He showed plenty of pace. I think he'll have better days ahead. Clonbrine Treaty was back in fourth, of course. Missed the kick, and that's something he's done a few times through his career. He was a very, very slow starter at the very start of his career, and certainly sharpened up through the Kirby Memorial. We've seen we saw in the latter stage of the Kirby just how good he is and will be. I still think he's potentially even better than he's looked. But again, missed the kick the other night. He finally did things right in Clonmel in the semi-finals. Perhaps never really looked comfortable around the place. I think a switch back to maybe Shelbourne Park, although he didn't. He's run well there without winning there. Has he won there? I don't think he's won in Shelbourne Park yet. You would imagine it's all guns blazing now for the Derby. Like that looks the obvious progression for Clonbrine Treaty.
Yeah, and I was listening to obviously the podcast last week, and even though he'd done that brilliant run in the semi-finals, you were sort of touching on to say there's probably better to come because he doesn't look as though he's a finished article. Obviously, he's still a young greyhound, so he's probably not. But you just get the impression that this greyhound could do any type of run, but the flaw is his trapping, and even Graham alluded to it last night when we were chatting beforehand. He says he's losing his races in the box. Listen, it has to be all systems going out for Shelbourne. No doubt. He's towards the top of the betting for the Irish Derby. That's surely the next stop. One wonders, will they go for the Champion Stakes and get a couple of runs to him in Shelbourne before the Derby starts? But he looks a dog with incredible pace, but unlike some of the other dogs that Graham has, he's maybe just not as consistent, and he needs to brush up on that.
Yeah, if and when the professionalism comes, you would imagine he's going to be an absolute superstar. There's no question about it. He's the type of dog I look for going into a Derby, a dog where he still hasn't reached his ceiling. And I know that sounds strange considering 2 to 3 of the runs he's produced. He's won at Kirby, but I still think this could be anything. Mendelssohn was 5th. It didn't happen for him. He found all sorts of traffic, and the same can be said for Clonmel, who missed the kick and, as we alluded to, race up the inside at the opening corner. A good produce stakes Robert. There's never been a bad one.
No.
Burgess Supreme, 550 yards could stretch him, although as JJ alluded to, he is getting stronger. But you would imagine that he's more of a Laurels dog than a Derby dog.
Yeah, yeah, and Shelbourne mightn't suit him either. As you said, like they could do really well if they went around the country looking at open 5-2-5s, and as you said, the Laurels looks his bread and butter. If he hits the lids most nights down in Cork later in the year, you'd expect him to lead or most of them around the Laurels. So you'd have to think that's the long-term aim. But just going back to Clonmel Treaty, and I know you're a big fan. 12 months ago, Shores Rex got turned over at 2-5 in a produce, and look at him now. I saw you wouldn't be giving up.
Stop stealing my lines, you fecker.
Yeah, we'll see. As you said, it's back and forth, so we need to keep the show on the road. But listen, he's already won a Kirby. He was bidden to become the second greyhound to complete the double, which takes some doing when you think of it. And Sean Burke said obviously they'd push the produce stakes a little bit back because the English Derby and the Kirby and stuff like that. But yeah, listen, I think this time next year, I think we're going to be still speaking about Clonmel Treaty.
Yeah, we better mention the other dog to do the double, Boyle Sports Hero, of course.
Yeah, absolutely,
because, Damien would be on the phone to me if I didn't give it a mention, It was some double when you consider it.
Absolutely, and I was looking through last night, and I'd missed it initially because you're going through the winners and winners and winners, and then I just happened to cop it, and I was like, geez, I don't really remember that. And then when I went in, it was just incredible. Like, to do that double, I think he won 9 out of 10, or he won 9 on the trot. It was just like for any dog to win back-to-back stakes of that caliber, like we say about the champion stakes and Irish Derby, because they run into each other. These two competitions pretty much run into each other as well. And for a pup to do it was just incredible. And like for Clonmel Treaty to get to the final last night, I know he didn't win every heat in the Kirby or the Produce Stakes. It was fair going. It's close to Boy got to both finals a couple of years ago as well. But yeah, as you said, it's a double that in 10 years' time, he might still be the only dog to have completed it. It's some achievement.
Yeah. It's not easy now. Like, to win a Kirby is hard enough, but then to win a Kirby and a Produce Stakes and two different tracks and two different types of dogs needed.
Yeah.
Boyle Sports Hero, of course, ran the Dundalk International. They will have that option. I'm sure they'll be given that option.
Right.
By the crew at Dundalk. So just don't be surprised if Clonmel Treaty turned up there. You'd imagine with a decent enough start that Dundalk would really suit him, because he can fly down the back straight, and there's no bigger back straight than there is in Dundalk. So Wesson, we'll hold our horses on that one. Clonmel itself, Robert, a good crowd. It looked really well on the television.
It did. It was a real good buzz. It's it's not the biggest track in the world, but the restaurant was hopping. We got there about 5:30. The restaurant was full. There was music already. I'll be honest with you, the reception we got, and we'd never been down before. Sean Burke rang me earlier in the week just to see was everything okay. He was like, "Do you want a table?" I brought Rachel and the girls down, for the evening that was in it. We couldn't have been looked after any better. And then everybody wanted to chat, which makes our job easier, as Ian. The hardest part when you're doing
I think it's something people have recognized in the last 2 to 3 years, that they need to front up, need to talk, need to give information, paint a good sort of impression of the sport. And in recent times, it's much easier to get people to talk to a camera. Yeah,
and Sherry-Ann O'Donnell, she was like my helper last night. She was asking, who do you need? Who do you want? Will you chat to this guy? We checked for Frank Nine. Obviously, he was down there. I think he's fairly confident Ireland are going to win in Towcester next Saturday. But that's what you want. There's so many people behind the scenes that help us out, and they don't really have to. But as you said, a lot of people, they seem to want to talk more. And sure, that's what people want. You want to hear what happens behind the scenes, and you want to put a face behind the voice.
Well, Clonmel, that's their night. That's their big night of the year. Obviously, they have 2 or 3 big nights through the year, but this is always the biggest night of the year, the night of the final of the National Produce Stakes. And it's something I've said on this platform in recent times, that, we need to make the big nights count. We need to get people through to prove it, and that will bring them back again. There's no question about it. But create a real sense of occasion around the likes of the Produce Stakes. And you see Limerick for the Kirby and the Ledger. You see Cork for the Laurels. But then go to some of the smaller tracks, and that's why each track should have their big night. Like Galway Oaks now is a big deal, and places like that. Mullingar has their Cesarewitch, the Fair Warrior. You want to be getting people in the doors for these big nights. That brings me along just before we're going to move on now from the Produce Stakes, before we get into the Cuchulainn action. Just want to mention Enniscorthy.
Mhm.
Last Thursday evening, they ran a big night. It was run in conjunction with the Irish, or with the Light for Lisa campaign, Relay for Life, I believe it was called. But all fundraising was for the Irish Cancer Society. Huge crowd down there. Powder Freeman, who was running the night, basically, in memory of his late wife Lisa, ran against the Greyhounds down there. Rains Anna May, owned by his father, Noel, I believe, beat it quite handily. But all in all, a wonderful, wonderful night down there. Just great to see a huge, huge crowd at Enniscorthy for a very worthwhile cause, and just see people at the track.
Yeah, and Enniscorthy, you were talking about local tracks, and Enniscorthy is another brilliant track. And hopefully not too far down the line, RPGTV get down there, maybe for a Michael Fortune race final. But Enniscorthy is a great track. It's a great evening out. There's a real local spirit, real community down there. And as you said, Ian, and we saw it over the weekend up in Shelbourne, and obviously in where I was last night.
Clonmel.
It exactly, yeah. It sources some serious dogs. I know, didn't JT Jet and JT Dutch start down there? Obviously, JT Jet went on to win an English Derby. It's a proper track for proper dogs.
Yeah, sure is. Thorn Falcon, of course, won an English Derby as well since then.
Yeah,
Moving on. Shelbourne Park on Saturday night, good crowd present on what was a cracking night's racing. There was some tremendous action from start to finish, but we're going to feature, of course, the RPG TV Corn Cuchulainn, because the cameras will be back there in a couple of weeks' time for the final of the Corn Cuchulainn. Of course, they'll be there for the final of the Champion Stakes the week after, the week before. Week before
yeah,
is the final of the Champions Stakes. So the Champions Stakes starts this Saturday night coming, of course.
yeah.
Hard to forget that. I'll be oven toaster, unfortunately, although I'm looking forward to it.
There you are.
The Corn Cuchulainn, some wonderful, wonderful action. Let's get stuck into it. The opening heat, we saw Ballymacjonjo start a very hot favourite. We missed the kick, Robert, and he was then sort of not forced wide, but he tends to stay very wide around dogs,
Yeah,
especially when he does have dogs up his inside. And as a result, it sort of turned into a bit of a mixed battle. We saw Peter Sidney and Cuchulainn going toe to toe for much of the way, with Ballymacjonjo joining them on a couple of occasions. At the end, he is really finishing strongly. He's only beaten ahead and ahead into third, but this was about the front two. Peter Sidney just got the better of Cuchulainn in a driving finish. Cuchulainn was later suspended, had a previous mark on its card. I didn't realise that. I didn't see an awful lot myself, but it's
yeah.
hard to see it. I was watching off the screen, and it was quite distant, the camera work. So I'm sure those that made the decision were in a better position than me. But Peter Sidney ran well for Georgie Roach, a man who has put his heart and soul into Enniscorthy, as we're speaking of, one of the great patrons down there. This son of Droopy Sidney and Blundell Spark is certainly bred to stay this far. He's a half-brother to, of course, Dana Point, who was the brilliant, brilliant marathon performer
Yeah.
from a couple of years back. But Peter Sidney, a good winner. He'll need to go faster, but he certainly has stamina.
He does. Listen, there's no doubt about it. As you said, he was shocked. Ballymacjonjo was sent off 1-6. Peter Sidney was a second run over 750. He was running 8.3s in 5.25. So listen, it was a step up from him to win this. It was a little bit messy. I didn't, as much as they were sort of, colliding a little bit, I didn't see an awful lot in it. But as you said, there's people who are in a better position to judge that than me. But yeah, Ballymacjonjo, like, he'd done the 41-49 the week before. You were expecting him to do something similar. Missed the break, and yeah, as you said, when he's behind Greyhounds and running wide, it's not going to help him over 750. So he just probably needs to trap a little bit better. You wouldn't give up on him. There was a lot of money for him in the outright market leading up to last Saturday. I think he was put in 9-2 or 5-1. I think he went off 2-1 outright favourite. He's still probably one of the dogs to beat, but you'd need to just see him trap a little bit better. And the Greyhound who finished fourth, Trapper Queen, she came from off the clouds. She looks a proper stayer who will probably do better over further. But yeah, listen, it was a little bit messy, but Ballymacjonjo can do it over the 750, so you wouldn't even think about giving up on him just yet.
1-6. I can't remember too many starting short of prices and getting beaten in Shelbourne Park over the years. I'm sure there have been a few, and
Yeah,
like, as I'm sure I'll get a text tomorrow. Oh, you forgot about such and such a beating at 1-10 or whatever. But
yeah,
1-6 is a fairly short price. I can't imagine too many
absolutely.
fingers were burnt at that price. Yeah, I think, as you say, I think he'll improve considerably before the run. We saw the 41-49 return. And if he hadn't got home the other evening, it'd be more of an issue. But he did get
Yeah,
home. It was just a case of he
yeah.
threw away so much ground. And as you say, with a better start, he can certainly dip much. You could dip. It could go with sort of 50, 60 spots faster, I'm sure, in future. He may need to, because the second heat was won in mighty impressive fashion by 365. This lady had to be withdrawn from the Oak. She had a small problem. Scott Phelan had said, listen, we're in a race to get her back. He said, but she's plenty fit enough, and, you know, we're just hopeful she'll be back for the Cuchulainn. And, you know, by God, was she back. She absolutely took off, flashed out, made every inch, 41.30, win 6 lengths, handy as you like. She is a big, big fancy for this Cuchulainn.
She is, and you pretty much said it a couple of times. You know, she pinged it out and gone. It was over in a matter of stride. You know, she'd done 41.32 back in January, but this was visually on the eye. You know, you obviously saw a lot of it is about times, but you know yourself, and certainly when you're commenting, you know when a run is good. And you knew she was flying, like she was out and gone. You mentioned obviously she'd won a second round heat at the Irish Oaks, so she could do it over 5.25, but she looks to be able to do it over any trip. And as you said, I don't know what price she is now, but she's definitely amongst the ones you have to beat in this competition, I think.
We have seen the likes of her dozens and dozens of times over the years, bitches that just fly over 750 yards because they are natural starters and they just have this inherent stamina. And that's what she has. Like, she's just a flying starter, and she just keeps on going. She's just an absolute, she's a dinger. No question about it. And congratulations to the Pints of Highness and who stuck with her and Scott, because, you know, she's had a couple of issues. They're after getting her back now, after you know, okay, albeit a brief spell on the sidelines, but they've turned down plenty of offers for this lady. I know that myself, because a couple of people inquired about her with me. So fair play to them for holding on to her, and they could really, really be richly rewarded on July 15th, because this lady is clearly in flying form. Sober Bullet ran a big race in second spot for Carl Ramsbottom. He's improved each night: 43.23, 42.61, 42.10, and 41.72 the other evening. He's getting to grips with this staying, Lark. He'll need to sharpen up early, but stamina's not an issue.
No, and it was a personal best from the other night as well. And as you said, you know, he's definitely getting used to the 6 bends. He's more than likely going to improve. Another potential star for Carl, you know. He seems to be getting them every few months. And Ballymac back in third. She'd run over the 750 in Cork. She's done 41.75, which, you know, would have won the first heat. So it's a fair run. But just going back to 365, Ian, you know, you're as good a judge over 750 as there is. If you have a bitch or a dog who can lead, and you know they stay, it doesn't matter what's in behind them. It's just so hard to pick them up. And as you said, there's been so many bitches like her over the years that if she's on song, you know, she's going to do 41.30 most days of the week.
Yeah, how often do you see it? You know, you take that ping from whatever trap, and bang, you're on that corner. And because it's such a short run up, it gets tight in behind, and
Absolutely.
a 2-length lead can quickly turn into a 5-length lead, and then try and catch me, and then they might pile up again at the, like, you got to remember there's another 4 bends to go then, you know, when they're past the stands. Third bend they generally meet up, or the 5th bend you've one's tying up and you've one's coming on, and again they meet again. And if you're out in front of all that, you don't have to worry about it. You're absolutely just galloping free, and it even helps your stamina as far as I'm concerned. I know you're burning off more energy,
100%.
but it helps your stamina because you don't have to check your stride. You don't have to worry about it. You're just galloping strongly. And I think that's the case with 365. Ballymac Katie, you may not have seen it. I'm not sure it could be seen in the video. She was a long way back. I mean, a long way back at the 4th bend, and she took off down the back straight. And for her only to be beaten a short head by Sober Bullet, who was staying at Stoutley, was a hell of a run. I think she has the potential to be very, very, very talented over this 6 bend trip. Not the only one in the litter, it must be said. There's one gone across the pond that I expect big things from. More on that in the future. But this daughter of Ballymac Anton and Ballymac Merkel, stamina is not an issue, as we saw on the Deadly Kennels Open 750, and it was an eye-catching run the other evening. And just don't be surprised if she got better as the company got better through this competition. Moving on to Heat 3, and here Garfinney Blaze, that man Graham Holland. Oh, look at the litter. Ballymac Anton, Ballymac Merkel, a brother to Ballymac Katie, as we said, bred to stay. So impressive on 6 bend debut the previous week, and then the other evening, just a professional display. Just got slightly held up on into the opening corner, but quickly shook it off and went on to win by 9 lengths in 41-44. Rancher's Master, so to say, running well in second spot for much of the way. Lady Joanne was third. Sad to see Dazzle Rolex going out in the circumstances that he did. He lost all sorts of chance and ground on the opening bend, and he was actually only beaten by 2 spots to qualify as one of the fastest forts, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
He looks one to keep an eye on. It was a lot to ask him to be thrown into this company in just his second career start. His first career start coming over 750 yards last week. But Garfinney Blaze is a big player in the competition.
Absolutely, and there's been a trend with it with a couple of the dogs, or a few dogs that ran over the weekend. There's a lot of young dogs who are stepping up to 750 probably earlier in their career than we would have seen in the past. This was only his 5th race. He started off in the Kilkenny Champion Unraced, and as you said, after maybe not the greatest of starts, he just managed to get clear at the bend, even though he was slightly held up. But it was really from the winning line the first time round that he really got motoring. He'd beaten McNeil the previous week over 750 when most of us thought McNeil might win, but he's a dog with plenty of pace, and if he can start a little bit better, 41-44, you have to think he's certainly a stayer that we're going to see plenty of, and he's a big player already.
Yeah, he's a 79-pound dog. Raced at 79 the other night. But just again, another relentless galloper. He has loads of pace, loads of stamina. Clearly one to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm.
Rancher's Master may well come on for it. That was his first 6-bend run. You'd like to see him getting a good start and seeing what he's capable of. Lady Joanne was a big price, but ran okay in third. And we spoke about Dazzle Rolex finishing out of the frame in 4th. Keep an eye on him. He's a very strong runner. Big future as a stayer, I'm sure. On to Heat 4. And for much of the way, it looked like Prince Lucius was going to land the spoils. When Ollie steps him up and trip like this, I can't remember Ollie having too many stayers over the years. You have to respect them. There was money for him the previous week in a good contest. The other evening, he looked for much of the way like he was going to land the spoils. But in the end, McNeil was just that little bit close. I think 750 yards as far as McNeil wants to go, but he just did enough to get there. And and that was it. I'm not sure he even led to the escape, but there's no question he has both a huge engine and huge ability. McNeil, a good winner for Paul Hennessy. Prince Lucius just narrowly beaten into second spot. It was all about them. Newport Pier was back in third, and Hackett Carlow, another member of that Ballymac litter, back in 4th qualifying. All of them breaking 42 seconds. So it was a good quality heat. McNeil was the winner.
He was the winner, and as you said, I think you're right at the moment, and it might be the case long term as well, that 750 is as far as he wants, because he looked like he was coming to win it. Like, there's no doubt, I don't think he had any other ideas in his head. He just maybe was tiring, and that's all it was, because he just, as you said, he didn't need the escape. He just got his head down where it mattered.
Well, if you look the previous week, like, he leads and he's picked up by Garfinney Blaze, who is obviously very strong. He's beaten 3 lengths. You wouldn't say he's not staying it. You'd say others are staying it stronger. But for him to show the effort to get there and to win by a head, I think it's testament to the dog, because, as I said, I'm not sure he fully sees it out. I think it's certainly as far as he wants to go.
Yeah, and the Prince Louis dog, obviously, or Lucius dog, had gone a long way clear. And in fairness to McNeil, from the 4th bend, he showed an awful lot of pace to get into a winning position, and he did a lot of hard work to get where he was. 41.76. You take it most days of the week. It's only his second run over 750. He's obviously come back from Towcester. Very similar profile to maybe the likes of Priceless Jet and Hello Hammond, who maybe needed a little bit of time to show what they were over 750. But yeah, he stays it. There's no doubt about it. But as you said, there's probably better stayers at the moment in the competition than him.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out that this is a road that Paul Hennessy's gone down with before. You mentioned Priceless Jet there. It is a real confidence builder, the 750-yard trip, because there are slower dogs around them. They get loose. They get a free run, and dogs come out of it in great form. You think, it's going to take the edge off them. Often it doesn't. Often it really stands to them. We saw that with Ballymac Kingdom, Price's Jet, dogs like that. So yeah, certainly don't be giving up on dogs like this. Last year, of course, Crafty Kokoro won the Corn Cuchulainn. She went on to be Derby third, and it could have easily been a bit closer had it not happened at the 3rd bend. She was forced to check her stride. So dogs come out of this Corn Cuchulainn, you think, that'll blunt their speed. Not a bit of it. Dogs are far more hardy than we give them credit for. Prince Lucius second, Newport Pier third, but McNeil a good winner. And so on to the final heat. And Liam Dowling, We've mentioned one of his already, Ballymac Katie. Kinturk Road did it in different style. This is the Deadly Kennels Open 6 or Open 750 winner around Curraheen Park. This was a hell of a run from her. She was just simply different gravy to her rivals. She really put them to the sword early, Robert. She wins by 6 lengths in 41-46, and this was a statement type display. Like, this is probably her track. She had experience in Shelbourne Park before she went to Cork. She didn't quite get to boss proceedings in Cork. She got to boss proceedings in Shelbourne Park the other night, and we saw the results. Hell of a run.
Yeah, you said this is her track, and I think 750 is her distance because she's now 4 from 4 over 750. It looks to be her bread and butter. Like, she took off from the fourth bend the other night. Which means if she's in the hunt going down the remainder of this competition, she's close enough. She's going to be one that everyone's going to be looking over their shoulder for. She just looks as though she's, you mentioned Lehman and all of those brilliant stairs. She already looks as though she's going to be on the staying, in the staying department on the scene for a long time to come. 41-46, there's not a lot more you can say about it. And again, with a lot of runs, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, visually, when a dog is doing a good run. And this just ticked all boxes.
Yeah, the way she moved, as you said, between fourth and fifth bends,
Yeah,
just to put it to bed, just
absolutely.
was so impressive.
Yeah.
That's what you look out for in these six bend runners. Like, obviously, it's one thing to be staying off the final bend into the line, but they really do their damage down the back straight. When other dogs are sort of hitting, well, in this case, some dogs hitting unknown territory. That'll change obviously as we go through the competition, but that's where they really make their moves. Their top six bend dogs, between the fourth and fifth bends, be it in front or from behind. That's where you need to be showing all your pace. A couple of good runs on the undercard, Robert. I just want to mention to you, a Stone Park Sid was so impressive for Michael O'Donovan and Michael O'Dwyer. He didn't get the fastest of starts and had to work his way into a position off the second bend, but really flew down the far side and picked up Ballymac Scotty in the closing yards. He's a dog that came out of Kilkenny with a big reputation. He was a finalist in the Champion Open Unraced. He'll need to show more urgency to the corner, but I thought it was a very encouraging run by a bright young prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a dog. I think he's already got a little bit of a mini fan club as well because he's got a lot of followers. Yeah, he's a dog going places. He's a dog improving, and I think he's a dog we're going to see plenty of over the coming months.
Yeah, no question about that. Other good runs on the night. Lucky Gift ran very well for Jerry Mealy. He's exposed. We know what he's about. Hovik's Tommy, good to see him winning. Of course, a Kirby Memorial finalist for Graham Holland. Got the better of Deadly Showtime down at the third bend, ran on strongly. He reminds me an awful lot of Black Farron, a dog that Graham had run up a Derby a few years ago, went to England thereafter. But he's that type of dog. He doesn't do anything flashy. He's just a great all-rounder. He flew from boxes the other night, actually. That's not something he always does, but he was a bit outpaced into the corner by Deadly Showtime, but he motors down the back. He stays on strongly. He does everything well. He's a good starter, good to the bend, good down the back, and good finisher. He does everything well, where there's other dogs to do certain things better than him. He's a good all-rounder, as we said. The last race in the card it was great to see Beeper's Lariat winning at Shelbourne Park for Jack Connelly and Lenny Hanlon. He ran so well in the early rounds of the English Derby. Again, he didn't hit the lids the other night. He's very strong, he's very pacey, but I just wonder if he's going to be sharp enough in the very best of company going on in the year. But he's certainly going the right way. He's only a June whelp. He's just 2 years of age, of course, and a lot to like about the way he ran the other night. He's a dog with a big engine and a big heart. He drove through at the third bend, took it up from Ballymac Walton, Boyle Sports Big. I think Boyle Sports Vic is an accident waiting to happen. Just didn't happen for him quite the other night. Had to check his stride a couple of occasions. Keep an eye on him. Ryhope Beach again caught the eye in the feet. He's just not showing enough early speed at the moment, but amongst the probably 5 or 6 fastest dogs in the country, I think I would like to give him a couple of confidence builders. If he was mine, I think I'd be tempted to stick him over a 575 or a 600 just to see him get loose on the bunny. It'll be interesting to see. But all these dogs, Robert, it's all about getting clues, because we're now looking at a stretch where we're going to have, obviously some of these dogs won't be in Dundalk International, but we could have Champion Stakes and Derby. And now is the time where you sort of start the posture.
Yeah, and there was another dog last night who came out of the Kilkenny Unraced. Everything went wrong for him last night. Now, I know the race was done, but he...
Sorry, Robert, you're breaking up there. Name the dog again. Hello.
French dog.
Flashy Farlow. Is that what you said to me?
Unreal bruiser.
Unreal bruiser, unreal bruiser. I heard you there. You are breaking up there just for a moment, unfortunately. We'll give it a second. Yeah, some great action at Shelbourne Park, but of course, much of the attention on Saturday night was on the action across the water because the Star Sports TRC English Greyhound Derby continued, Robert. Another good night for the Irish, and more particularly for Graham Holland. You know, what this man has achieved over the last decade has often been referred to, but I don't think we realize, or I don't think we'll realize until sort of in the future when we look back and realize just how dominant and how incredible his achievements were. Here he is with, you know, what did he send over, a team of 10 maybe to the English Derby? He's got 3 into the final. He's half of the field, and he will have the hot favourite, the close second favourite, and depending on the draw, he could well have the third favourite. You know, if Gaytime Nemo, if the draw works out in his favour, Romeo Command is obviously there for the home challenge. But, you know, 6 Irish runners in the semi-finals the other evening, and it was 3 of Graham's 4 that went through. No luck for Jack Tavernbella, for Burj Khalifa, and for Ballymacfin. But Clonmel and Swords Rex really did turn on the style.
Unbelievable. I think you're putting a mile when he said he had a good night. He had a great night. I think he couldn't have scripted it better if you were Graham Holland, because, you know, Clonmel bombing out, doing the clock for the second time in the competition, and Gaytime Nemo finishing second. You know, he said the pressure was off going into Swords Rex. I don't know if it was, because Swords Rex, you know, was always you'd have thought he was always the number one for Graham heading into the Derby. And within 5 strides, he's got the 2 semi-final winners, because Swords Rex did what Swords Rex has done every night of the competition. It's an unbelievable achievement. As you said, he went overweight, I think less than 10. Other than not getting Romeo Magico to the Derby final again, it's been the perfect Derby for Graham. His 2 big guns gone over. Clonmel, Swords Rex. Swords Rex is unbeaten. Clonmel has done the clock twice. And regardless of the draw, and it'll be out probably by the time, you know, people are listening to this, he's got an 80% chance of winning a back-to-back derbies. Just incredible. With 2 unbelievable greyhounds.
Yeah, as a result, we can't really preview the final with any sort of real sort of confidence is the wrong term, but with sort of any real sort of, you know, insight, because we don't know what way the draw is going to go. But can't imagine to be a bad draw for Clonmel or for Swords Rex. Obviously, they wouldn't like to see Clonmel in 1 and Swords Rex in 2, or even Swords Rex in 1 perhaps. But you know, if they get a kind draw, like, they will certainly dominate the market, no question about it. I think if Swords Rex gets a kind draw, he'll be odds on. That's my feeling. Looking at the opening heat, Clonmel, I think he'd run flat in the 3rd round. There was no question about that. Kevin O'Brien, I spoke to him, and said, sort of half hinted that there might have been a little sickness, you know, that was
he said
around.
It on RPG TV last night,
and then it was much brighter from him last week, in defeat behind Mystical Mario, and then bang, Saturday night. He didn't fly out. The 4-dog Cuchulainn actually made the fastest start, but Clonmel, after a stride, you just knew he was going to race up in the inside, and he got to the corner pretty comfortably in front. At Gaytime Nemo then forced his way through on the second on the opening bend to go second, and thereafter it was very much procession. Clonmel very much back to his best. I have to admit, I did feel that the 8-1 on offer during the week was an insult to the dog on the strength of basically 1 run, because I'd ignore the quarterfinal defeat. I thought he ran well in defeat that night, but on the strength of that 3rd round run, he seemed to be priced, you know. In many ways, he probably had a much easier task than Sir Romeo Command, who was clear second favourite for the competition. I thought Clonmel, I just think he's a more talented greyhound, and I thought the price was big. As a result, a few people took the odds, and they were proven 100% correct.
Absolutely, yeah. Listen, we saw how good he was last year when he won the RPG TV Juvenile Derby, and then followed it up at the Winter Festival. And I remember Graham saying the first night he won, when he led off the second bend afterwards, he said, I knew nothing would pick him up. And that, to me, sort of said what Graham thinks of this lad, because, you know, if he can say that in a puppy competition, if you lead off the second bend and nothing's going to pick this up, he knows the pace that he has. And I agree with you. I think the key run for him in this derby was the quarter-final night, because obviously it looked as though obviously something was missing the 3rd round, or maybe he just was regressing. But the night in the quarter-final, even though he didn't win, he was much better down the back, and it was a much more solid display. And he seems to be now on an upward curve, having, obviously, you know, Kevin O'Brien said it last night. He said, listen, we knew there was something wrong. There was sickness. It definitely affected him. They got through, obviously, that night when they finished second to Ballymacfin, but he's improved rapidly now in the last couple of weeks. And, the clock obviously the other night, and I know we can't strictly go on clocks, but visually it was very good. And he seems to be, dare I say it, peaking again at the right time,
Yeah.
which, if
He,
you're all about George Rex, I think you've
you
got a little dog to worry about.
you mentioned it there, upward curve. He's a dog that seems to be on a continuous upward curve. I know there was the dip
Yeah.
and a couple of runs here and there, but in terms of his career, he was a big price to win the juvenile derby. He was a project dog at that point. He was coming on. He had run an unraced stake only a week or two prior to the juvenile derby. He was getting better through that competition. We saw him in the final, but still he wasn't the consistent trapper. And that was one of those nights where he took a flyer. Then, of course, we saw him, winning in really sort of determined fashion at the Winter Racing Festival before coming back this year. We saw him in the early rounds of the Kirby. He was brilliant, broke the clock down in Limerick, or equaled the clock down in Limerick for the 525. Then went to the select stakes, winning from a tricky draw in the final. And you could just see that he was just getting that bit more mature, confident with each run. And then all of a sudden he's off to England. It was the night of the awards down at Curraheen Park. Kevin O'Brien sort of collared me after the action and sort of said, Graham is keen to run him in England. What would you do? I said, do you want me to buy your ticket? I said, run him. I said, he'll, like, all going well, he should either be favourite or second favourite with Swords Rex. That's the way I said it then to him. And I'm just glad, because these things come back to bite you in the backside. But no, here we are. And he's in an English Derby decider with a very strong chance. Gate Time Nemo, such a big run again the other evening. The O'Connells, like, my God, they get some twist out of their dogs. Like, and this is another homebred. They've had a Derby finalist in the past with Gate Time Hawk, and here we are with Gate Time Nemo, and he's every bit as talented as Hawk was. And just don't go ruling him out. He didn't take a flyer the other night. Nothing does from trap one. If he got a good draw in the final, we saw what he can do in the quarters. Just don't be ruling him out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He didn't get a flyer the other night. Now, he never looked like winning, but he always looked like he was going to finish second. He can start better. Like, I think he was 80-1 at one stage leading into the Derby. He's been very rock solid. I think he probably, and again, by the time this comes out, that we'll know the draw. I think he might need one if he's going to win this Derby. Certainly two. He'll need to be inside, I think, Clonmel Duke and Swords Rex if he is to win. It's going to be very hard for him to see him win from 4 and 5. But listen, he's capable of a flyer. We've seen it in derbies in the past. We saw it in the Produce Stakes last night. It's all about those first few seconds, and he's capable of putting in a really good run together.
Yeah, in behind, the third obviously went to Cuchulainn, who represented the Reese Kennel. They have a rich Derby pedigree. Congratulations to them for getting this strong runner through. A 6-ben dog at one point in his career. He's obviously a talented 4-ben dog also, but running so well for them. He denied Burj Khalifa, who, it just didn't quite happen for on the night. He was in a lovely position in the opening corner. You think, now go. But then you look at the dogs that are in front of him and you go, oh. And then you knew Cuchulainn was going to kick again at the third bend. So he tried everything he could to get by him to that third bend. And I had to do it by then, because if he didn't, Cuchulainn, as I said, a 6-ben greyhound, kicks on again. He ran so well for Brendan Matthews and for Chris Sauer. They had some crack with him.
They did, and we saw the pictures the week before. Wayne McCarthy was over there, and they were putting pictures on Twitter, and they were living the dream. And as you said, they just didn't get the rub of the green, because if they did, they were in a Derby final. And what a week they would have had that they've been at the Derby launch today, and that they've got a really good greyhound, and they got a real good ride. But the night you don't want it to happen is semi-final. Like, that's the night you just need luck on your side, and they didn't get it.
Yeah, and to finish fourth in a Derby semi-final, you can only imagine how Andy Murray felt with the Gord Kelly Nestor dog, fourth in 2 Irish Derby semi-finals over the 2 years. Back in last spot was Ballymacfin. It just didn't happen for him. It just didn't happen for him. He didn't like the place, and Liam has alluded to the sickness just probably took more out of him than any other dog that got it. This wasn't the Ballymacfin we know and love, and we will see much better from him in the near future. He'll be given a short rest, I'd imagine. Who knows where he'll turn up? He could well be, where we know we're 26th. Could probably get an Irish Derby invite or a international invite. They could potentially go down Champions Stakes route, but the Derby is very much the target for him, you would assume. On to the second heat. Swords Rex and Jack Tavern Bella. It didn't happen for Jack Tavern Bella. Again, it was just the 5-runner race actually didn't suit her. Like, she was probably needing a little bit of trouble in front of her to run on strongly. And then when when she did get racing, she has the likes of Savannah Bow and Ninja Kerry and real strong runners in front of her. She's not picking them up to qualify. But in contrast to her, Swords Rex, you've said it earlier on, just so professional, stunning. Not the fastest in the stride. Ninja Kerry took an absolute flyer from the outside, but Swords Rex just whoosh. Those first 10 strides are so purposeful. He just knows exactly what he wants to do. His immediate acceleration was there for all to see. He's going into a Derby final unbeaten in the competition and will be a short price favourite, irrespective of the draw. If the draw goes well for him, he'll be odds on. If the draw doesn't go well for him, he'll still be 5-4, 11-8. Maybe not even. Very hard to see him getting stopped at this stage, Robert.
No, it is. You're right. The draw, some dogs need some traps. He can do it from 1 to 5. He's a certain leader, I think, barring accidents. And as you said, it's those exciting first few strides. It's not like he pings the lids. It's like he hits the ground running. It's just that stride of his. It's like he's got one stride for every other dog's two. It's just he takes off. And every night at the Derby so far, within 5 yards, this is all over.
Yeah.
And if he does it on Saturday night, regardless of what's around him, I think we're going to have a similar feeling, because if he does what he's been doing, it's just very hard to see what can pick him up. And with the greatest respect to Clonmel, who's been flying and he's done the clock twice, I was going to ask if Swords Rex leads it by a length of Clonmel off the second bend, what happens?
I think either way, if Clonmel leads a length or Swords Rex leads a length, they'll finish in the same. They'll finish in that order. Swords Rex will beat Clonmel, or Clonmel will beat Swords Rex. I don't think one has come from behind the other. I think they're very similar in terms of their ability. I think they're both exceptionally fast greyhounds, and I think both of them get the 500 meters as well as they need to get it. I can't see Swords Rex being picked up if he gets loose early. The same for Clonmel. That'd be my take.
Yeah, and there's no reason to suggest why Swords Rex is going to miss it, because he's just been so professional. You'd have people say, "Oh, but he's due to miss it," or whatever. He's not, because he's given no indication that he is going to miss the key. We've seen Clonmel miss it a couple of nights. We've seen every other greyhound in the competition. They haven't been consistent. This lad is as professional as you get. We saw it in the Easter Cup. We've seen it in the Kirby. We've seen runs he's done over the last 12 months. He hasn't got just savage pace. He's just mentally, he seems to be as good as he is on the track. And I just think that, I don't think it matters what trap he gets. And I'd say Graham and Connections probably think the same.
Yeah, no, very fast greyhound. Dual classic winner, and it should be 3 really when you consider last year's Produce Stakes. Didn't happen for him at Shelbourne Park the back end of the year. Towards Derby time, he had an issue. He was rushed back, and you could just see he wasn't himself. This was the only sort of low point in his career. And then with the 2 or 3 races, found himself getting back to himself and culminating that stunning 27.79 and Derby final night at Shelbourne Park. Graham alluded to it back then, that this is a dog that thrives on racing. And that would certainly sort of stand up to scrutiny.
Absolutely.
You consider how well he ran through the early rounds of Produce Stakes after Kirby, how well he's running now in England, having not been sensational in the Easter Cup, but just good enough, But I think he's improved for those runs. And I think he's just absolutely at the peak of his powers right now. We're looking at a dog who is just happy with life and has the ability to show it on the track. He's just been sensational. And the very best of luck to Barbara and to Leonard Lowndes, we must mention, of course.
Absolutely,
very involved in greyhound racing for quite some time. Great supporters of the game. And they have a proper one. Like, they've had a couple of good dogs in the past. They won a Gold Cup, whatever, about 10 or 15 years ago. But this fellow is just different gravy than they've had before.
Yeah. And you touched on it there, it's been a long 6 weeks, English derbies, Irish derbies, they're fair going. But he's the one dog who's probably, we mentioned Clonmel possibly on an upward curve. And Graham has said it a number of times, Swords Rex needs racing. Another run next Saturday isn't going to be the winning or losing of an English derby team. If anything, he is going to have, the last 5 weeks is going to affect him less than the other 5 that he's in against. You remember the Irish Derby last year when it probably counted against him that he got knocked out in the first round because he maybe wasn't as busy going into it. He was all the rage. There was so many people talking about him heading into last year's Irish Derby this is the dog to beat. This is Graham's best chance. This dog is an absolute airplane. And it worked against him. And that was the night probably it was going to work against him, was the first night, because he hadn't been running. But as you said, the more he runs, the better he is. And I think we'll agree. I think it's going to stand to him Saturday night.
Yeah. Listen, let's hope that the draw works in their favour. By the time you're watching us, you know the draw. And you're probably screaming at the TV, oh, he's been drawn in 2 and Clonmel is in 1 and they're going to clash. And, listen, let's just hope for a good draw. Whatever it is. And let's just hope for another Irish trained winner of the English Greyhound Derby. Obviously trained by an Englishman in Graham Holland, but trained in Irish shores. That's the most important thing. It should be a wonderful, wonderful night at Towcester on Saturday night. We really look forward to it. And best of luck to the 3 finalists from these shores, of course. Swords Rex, Clonmel, and of course Gaytime Nemo. A couple of other dogs.
Just interrupt you. Obviously, you're commentating Saturday night. You were there last year. I've never been to an English Derby final night. I've been to Wimbledon. It's obviously a great night, and there's going to be a lot of Irish there, naturally enough.
Oh, it'll be packed with Irish. We have no doubt about that. Much will depend on the weather. It's not a venue where you want to be when it's raining, I'd imagine. But if it's a beautiful summer's evening, as they've been very lucky with in recent times, I think it'll be a great occasion. It can fit a huge crowd. It's a perfect venue for a party. There's no question about that. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself there last year, and I plan to thoroughly enjoy myself again this year. Let's get on.
Has it been a good derby in your opinion?
I think it's worked out very much as we thought it would, to be honest, Robert. I don't think there was huge strength in the UK. And I think they'll be the first to admit that themselves. Now, they found 1 or 2 dogs through the competition, but just didn't quite happen for them either. They probably didn't have the experience at this top class level to really sort of produce it through the whole competition. Whereas our dogs come in that bit more hardy, sort of established. You look at the top 2 in the market, Swords Rex and Clonmel. Like Swords Rex is the dual classic winner. He's danced every dance, as Damien Linehan would always say. In Clonmel, we have a juvenile derby and a select stakes winner, a dog who was a star in the early rounds at a Kirby, a dog who was very much an upward curve. Gaytime Nemo hadn't raced since January, so he was coming off the back of a layoff. But if you look at his form last year, he's taken on the very best, beaten them on a couple of occasions as well. So he was going the right way. He was sort of one of the springers. But from what I hear and from what I sense, I don't think it was a surprise to Graham that he'd gone this far. And I wouldn't be surprised now if 1 or 2 in the kennel had picked up a few quid each way now on Gaytime Nemo. And, he could actually be worth more to them than maybe one of the other 2, because they were obviously shorter prices. But just don't be surprised now if stories come out that they had him backed at 80 to 1 or whatnot, because I think they think a lot of Gaytime Nemo. And understandably, he's very fast, very strong. Good derby, certainly from an Irish point of view. We would like the English to have a stronger challenge in the future, just to put it up to us. Now, we don't want them to beat us, but it'd be nice to win 3 or 4 in a row, wouldn't it? We'll move on, because I have to touch on a couple more things just before we close. Boyle Sports Bob ran at Shelbourne Park on Saturday night, or Friday night, Robert. He was winning a final of it was an 8-2 stake. Was an 8-2 stake. Now, don't get me wrong. Cuchulainn Mary, who was second out of Derby finalist, the Derby runner-up Holy Cross Leah, had posted 28-25 in the semi-finals, and looks a really, really bright prospect.
Absolutely.
But I sort of was fancying Boyle Sports Bob to somewhat, like he's beaten in his previous 2 outings, but this dog, some good news, and Rowana Best showed all sorts of speed in those 2 outings. Kevin Hennessy sourced him, trained by his father Paul, for obviously John Boyle and Ned Murphy. He was known as Forest Paddy, obviously bred by Paddy Keogh. Now he's Boyle Sports Bob, as we said, showed a bit of promise in the opening round of Kilkenny in the Champion Open Unraced, caught the eye of Kevin, went out of that competition, but he's after making a shrewd purchase, because this fellow did 28.04 the other night. As I said to you, son of good news, Rowana Best. Do you remember Rowana Best? She was really top class lady. She won a first round heat of the Derby, I think, in 29.50. She was very, very fast for Adrian and Paul. Is it Adrian O'Neill and Paul Maher? But Boyle Sports Bob looks a very, very bright prospect. Did you get a chance to take a look?
I did, yeah. And it's fascinating when you obviously go in and look at the result, and you see a dog does 28.03, you think, he's won by 8 or 9 lengths. But as you said, the Cuchulainn Mary bitch, who did a good run in Newbridge, from the second bend, the 2 of them just took off. and they left everything else for dead. Now,
They
obviously,
left them
Buzz,
they left them standing.
yeah,
They went from 2 lengths in front of them to be about 8 lengths in front of them. Yeah.
like they were the only two dogs in the shot at the third bend. It was a proper duel. And in fairness to Boyle Sports Bob, he's gone away and he's won 4 lengths and she's run a blinder in defeat. But it was a proper buckle from the second bend. Two really, really good dogs. He'd obviously hadn't got the clearest of runs in his previous 2 races. You said he started off in Kilkenny, but he's improved dramatically. Now, obviously, he's in the top grade now after doing 28.03. Like a lot of Paul's dogs, from the second bend is where he's going to do his damage, and he showed that the other night. But fascinating prospect. Great to see the black and amber team with another intriguing newcomer or youngster. Hopefully, he can build into a Derby contender, but definitely a dog to be excited about.
I'd say he just screams out 550 yards, doesn't
Yeah.
he? It's just like the old cliche they use in horses, like whatever he does over hurdles is a bonus. Like this fella, whatever he does over 525 is a bonus because he is absolutely made for 550
Yeah.
yards, maybe 575 yards, 600 yards. But I'll tell you something,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing him. Now, obviously, he's going to be thrown in the deep end now, and it might take him another few runs to get going to really find his feet. But when he does find his feet, have no doubt this is a very, very fast greyhound. Another very fast greyhound that ran on Saturday night, albeit an hour up the road at Dundalk, was a youngster called Get It Right for Ollie Bray. Ollie sold the dog that won the Island Bridge, the gallant night dog, and you'd think to yourself, God, it would be nice to see him hold him on and have a good crack at Dundalk. And a week or two later, who appears? Get It Right wins in 21-12 on debut at Dundalk. And then the other night, he's taking on some really hardened sprinters and a Gold Cup winner in the form of Bogger Hunter. And I think what impressed me most was the fact that it wasn't flashy. It wasn't this absolutely lightning start and found himself clear and just kept on galloping. He came away reasonably well on almost level terms, nearly just showing in front, but he really charged into the opening corner, opened up a lead of about a length and a half, got around the corner, and then the way he galloped to the line to post 20.92, like it's a stunning fastest of the year run from this youngster. He's a son of New Inn Taylor out of No Recollection. Of course, No Recollection was a top class runner for Ollie himself. This is a dog he's bred, obviously, himself. She was a finalist behind Kilmacdonough in the 2009 Oaks. In fact, she finished second in the 2009 Oaks, and she's certainly breeding them, it seems, or 2019 Oaks. She's certainly breeding them, it seems. This isn't the first from the litter to shine, and this fellow just looks the real deal.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the litter, there's 4 already unbeaten in the litter, and 2 of them are 2 from 2, including this lad. But as you said, like you read the comments and it said Bogger Hunter sort of got crowding. He didn't really. Like I watched it back a couple of times. Get It Right was ahead of him at the opening bend. Bogger Hunter, you might have lost a length or maximum. But as you said, it was around the first 2 bends and then in the home straight that this lad showed the gears he had. It wasn't out and gone and pretty much got a solo. He the battle from the first bend. Sensational run, 20.92, as you said, fastest run of the year. Just incredible. Like he's put a good field to bed in the matter of 10 strides. And as you said, Ollie, he made a decision to get rid of that good sprinter a few weeks ago. Maybe he knew what he had.
Yeah, who knows? He might sell this fellow either. It's hard to turn down a big check, and I can imagine he's not been short of offers. But Get It Right, if he turns up in the Barwon Racing Irish Sprint Cup, which promises to be another wonderful competition, he is certainly going to be a big player. Have no question about that. He's 2 from 2. And 20.92 in the second run. Who's to say he's not going to do 20.70 in his third? Now that would be some run.
And it's good to see New and Taylor get a smart dog. I know he's got the rural Kai dog and he's got rural Taylor. Obviously, he's a relative new sire on the block, and he wouldn't have had an awful lot of runners. But good to see him get a smart dog, because
just the last few weeks now, 1 or 2 have started appeared, and there's room on the block for a couple of new kids, and you and Taylor could certainly. Well, like Droopy Sydney, he can't go on forever, I'm afraid. No. And down the line, there's going to need to be crossed to the Droopy Sydney, because what was there? There was 5 Oaks finalists, Droopy Sydneys. He can't. You need a cross for these, so there's room there for 1 or 2 promising young stud dogs coming forward. Robert, a pleasure as always. We look forward to next Monday, when we can sort of look back on what's happened. But A cracking winner of Produce Stakes with a bit of a story behind it. Great to see Sheila and JJ landing the spoils. A wonderful Cork Cuchulainn, and of course that English Derby to look forward to. It's going to be a big week in Irish Greyhound racing.
It is, and we got a big few weeks coming up because obviously we've the Cork Cuchulainn final the following Saturday. The following Wednesday, we're in Dundalk for the International. First time we're up there. Following Saturday, we're at Champion Stakes. And then you know what happens after the Champion Stakes?
I certainly do. At this stage, we should know. Geez, I'll tell you what, Robert, you're going to be sending some invoice into RPG TV. You're going to be a busy man. You have 3 nights there in the space of a week and a half. Space of a week.
Yeah.
It's great to see it on RPG TV. It gets great reaction.
It does. And you see the reaction when you go to the tracks. Like, we touched on it a couple of times that after COVID, I think it was when a lot of people really appreciated seeing Irish Greyhounds racing on TV because a lot of people couldn't go to a lot of places. And now, they're putting they're out in the track and they're seeing the work we do. But last night was just testament to that, everyone, they could not do good and they could not do enough. They wanted to talk. It's so easy when you're not chasing people saying, I need to talk to someone for this or that, the other. They're coming to you, and you want to talk to them. You want to hear their stories. The JJ Fennelly story was brilliant last night. He was just glad to be in a final when we were chatting beforehand. He'd no expectations. And then afterwards, it was like, I'd say if he won the lotto, he'd have swapped winning the Produce Stakes for it. It was just brilliant. And you mentioned earlier on, Sheila Spillane as well. They were recognised obviously earlier in the year. It's just, they're proper Greyhound people. JJ's a tip man, It's like for me, it's like till they're winning the other, and it'll never happen, but I can still dream.
No comment. I'll bite my tongue just there in case Mayo chin Dublin next weekend.
You never know.
God, that'll be terrible. Anyway, that's it. Well done, Robert. Thanks very much indeed. I will no doubt catch up with you in the coming weeks because I will see you at Shelbourne Park on a couple of occasions, and I hope to be at Dundalk on the international night. So we'll see you then. Best of luck. That's it from us on Talking Dogs on this Monday. We have so much to look back on, so much to look forward to. Again, the very best of luck with anybody with runners left in the Cork Cuchulainn, and of course the English Greyhound Derby. To Graham Holland and all of the Riverside Kennels outfit, to the owners of the 3 wonderful greyhounds left representing Ireland, the very best of luck at Towcester on Saturday night. But that's it from us on this Monday evening. Good evening, good luck, God bless.